Hi, my name is Maxime Duymelinck and I'm happy to host today's podcast. Today we will be talking about the flexibility that employers offer to their employees regarding the place where they can work, whether it be at the office, at home or at a collaboration hub. And when we speak about home working, we also think about the pandemic, where working from home was at a certain point in time mandatory for a lot of employees. Luckily, we move beyond this period, and we still observe that many employees continue to request the option of working remotely for 1 to 2 days a week from the home office. So, to discuss this topic, I invited two persons, my colleague Sandra De Weerd and Thierry Janssen, who is CEO and co-founder of Xwork. So before we kick off, Sandra, Thierry, may I ask you to shortly introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah. Hi, Maxime. My name is Sandra. I'm working as a senior manager within PwC, where I deal with people-related services. My focus is on financial well-being, so everything that has to do with rewarding employees in a correct, optimized, equitable, and market-conform way. So voilà, that's for me.
Thank you, Sandra.
Okay, thank you, Maxime, for inviting me. My name is Thierry and I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Xwork. Xwork is basically a platform that helps companies and professionals to save on mobility and office costs by offering flexible and inspiring workplace close to the employee's home, thereby improving their employee engagement and work-life balance. The philosophy of Xwork is based upon three key principles that was at the start of the project. It's flexibility, proximity and maximization, the three X's from the Xwork. So from a flexibility perspective, Xwork gives a tailor-made solution to employee and organization by bringing together more than 50 co-working spaces in one easy-to-use platform. So Xwork actually allows employers to extend their work environment of its employees by giving them access to more than 50 co-working office space across Belgium. About the proximity, Xwork enables hybrid working for everyone. A co-working desk is available for over 19% of the Belgians within a 30-minute drive from anywhere in the country, so where they live. And the maximization point, with the rise of hybrid working, office space are often no longer tailored to the needs of the company, and companies are facing excessive fixed costs. By enabling employees to use shared workspace, co-working can become a new and sustainable source of savings, switching partially from fixed to variable cost, as the Xwork value proposition is based on a pay-per-use model.
Okay, that's interesting, Thierry.
Thank you.
So, and you're also speaking about the concept of hybrid working, where employees combine working at the office not only with their home office, but also with a hub. So this new way of working is more and more integrated within organizations.
Indeed.
And I think I can even say that it is a must-have for a lot of employers in the current war of talent. Allowing and offering remote work creates, on the one hand, opportunities for employers to build a long-term and sustainable new way of working. But of course, this is not without challenges. Working remotely makes collaborating with colleagues, interaction with the team, and building connection with co-workers more difficult, and which can potentially lead to lower productivity and even the risk of losing key profiles. And I think also not every job is designed to be exercised from home.
No, correct.
So, Sandra, in this respect, I have a first question to you. Can you tell us a bit more about how PwC assists clients in this regard?
Well, Maxime, the starting point of remote work analysis is the idea that the need for infrastructure is actually driven, it is determined by the level of interaction that is required by the job. So an easy example, a salesperson can simply not do his job without having direct contact or direct interaction with the client. Another example, an employee working in the treasury department will most likely provide services to other departments, so internally, but he or she will also be required to make contacts with external partners, with vendors, on a very regular basis. So by making the link between the level of interaction on the one hand and the need for infrastructure on the other hand, we actually came up with 4 types of employees, and to make it a bit more accessible, we work with personas, the personas who bring the principles to concrete life. So if you agree, I will briefly introduce you to them. So we have, for example, Simon Solitary. Simon Solitary represents a first group of employees who require a low level of interaction but a high need for infrastructure in their job. So Simon is a laboratory technician and he needs to be on site to effectively collaborate in person. So that's the first category. Secondly, we have people whose job requires a low level of interaction and also a low need for infrastructure. Typical example is a software developer. We called her Natalie Nomad. Natalie only requires an office space. It's more based upon pure organizational and cultural consideration because Natalie does not need to be at the office to do her work. Thirdly, we have people whose job requires a high level of interaction and also a high need for infrastructure. Typical example is a retailer. Our retailer is called George Greeter. George is required to come to the office as his core job requires office presence. Last but not least, the fourth category, people whose job require a high level of interaction and a low need for infrastructure. Typical example is a sales rep, Cindy collaborator. Cindy will typically use the office periodically, but Cindy can as good or equally be productive at home when she works remotely. So the idea is a bit that every employer employs Cindy's, Natalie's and Simon's, and by raising a few relevant questions, we are able to map these people and define the level of virtual work that is possible for each different profile. So that's actually the idea behind the virtual enablement framework.
Okay, it's really interesting how PwC deals with it and map these personas because I totally agree, different profiles have different needs.
Voilà, exactly.
So Thierry, can you share with us your insights and whether Xwork can be a solution for this?
Indeed. Xwork is driven by the concept of smart working that is shaping the evolution of the way we work and ultimately, in fact, the way we live. Hybrid work is currently the focus of much attention in companies, and indeed, as explained by Sandra, the first part of the exercise, and that is a prerequisite, is to determine which employee can work remotely and which cannot, depending on the activity of the person, the task he needs to perform, and so on. This is a careful exercise to be done by the employer, considering the criteria set by the employer. I agree that interaction and the need for infrastructure are important here. Once it is assessed who can work remotely and who cannot, it is important to shape the hybrid work format. For us, hybrid work is not only between the classical home and headquarters. At Xwork, we are convinced that hybrid work should be enriched with a third place of work, namely the near-home hubs. Balancing between the three H's, headquarter, home and hubs, may be the new norm for tomorrow's way of working. Each of these locations has specific characteristics that, when combined all together, allow organization to work and employees, of course, to work as efficiently as possible. To facilitate working in hubs, the Xwork platform brings a nationwide network of co-working space that can be booked by the employees. The company, after assessment again, allocates credits to the employees who are allowed to work in a co-working space, and the employee can use his credits in the co-working space of his or her choice to book flex desk and meeting facilities. Credits are individualized and managed via the platform. Once all the credits have been used, bookings by specific employees are no longer possible for a specific month, but of course these credits will be regenerated the month after. So the goal is to give employees the total freedom to work at the office, at home or in a third place, depending on the type of task to be performed. But, which is most important, by capping and managing the cost, the employer remains not, of course, in the driver's seat. Xwork wants to offer an additional place of work, the hub or co-working space, being a smart addition, from our point of view, to the home office and the corporate work office.
Okay, thank you, Thierry. And it's really interesting what Xwork offers to clients or employers. And indeed, such a cooperation hub can definitely be an added value in the employer's remote working policy. On the one hand, it can meet the requirements of the employees who want to avoid a heavy commute, and on the other hand, the requirements of the employer to avoid employees spending too much time working from home that they risk losing the company's DNA. In addition, I think Xwork seems also a solution to overcome two other biases in relation to working from home. So if I speak with HR persons, they always also mention the fear of missing out and the distance bias. The fear of missing out can lead that employees who have the option to work from home will still come to the office since they have the feeling to miss out an interesting opportunity or event that takes place in the office. And on the other hand, you have the distance bias that is related to the tendency to favor people who come to office most frequently and become the favorite of the management without working harder than in comparison to the employees who work from a home. And this can then potentially lead to an unfair process to promotion. So, Sandra, coming back to you, what does PwC propose to help companies to deal with these two HR challenges?
First of all, Maxime, at PwC, we believe that solutions must be found in holistic thinking. So when we assess the employees' well-being, we consider their entire ecosystem. So we look at the triangle, including the work type, the workforce, and the workplace, and the experience of work in the middle. This may sound a bit abstract, but in practice and in concreto, PwC can help with a lot of things. For example, during workshops, we reflect together with clients which types of hybrid working model suits their businesses best. In this respect, we advise clients to consider the employees' expectations in order to co-create a future of work with employees together. Next to the job content, remember Simon Solitary and his three colleagues, it is also important to consider employees' preferences, company values, and of course applicable legal restrictions. Next to this, we would also recommend building in flexibility into the working model framework to allow for changes when needed.
Brilliant.
And then, if I may, talking about change, switching to an activity-based working model requires a new mindset, not only for the employees who will need to embrace this change, but also for the leaders. Because allowing employees to work from home or from a hub office requires leaders to adapt their leadership style. And the rules of how teams are working together will need to be outspoken again, and everybody will need to agree and subscribe those rules. And this is actually a big transformation process that needs to be managed as well. If not, the risk will become very disruptive. And on top, you may not forget the communication aspect. Change always requires communication. We all know that a proper communication strategy can create an environment of trust and loyalty. So these are also two things you need to be very careful about. So I talked about the mapping of the employee profiles, preferences, the management of the change and the communication process, very important. And next to this, PwC can also ensure that the new working model is backed by compliance, and so we work out together with the clients the correct legal framework. So there is a lot that can be done, that needs to be done. But we are convinced that companies will really future-proof the people strategy by assessing roles and jobs in combination with the payment of a fair remuneration in a correct legal framework, and offering benefits like, for example, the possibility to work in a hub office, as Thierry explained. That's a nice add-on, of course, that will be appreciated, I think, by many employees.
Indeed, I also totally agree with what you have said. And thank you for sharing these concrete tips that companies could consider when building their new way of work policy. Thierry, from your side, any final thoughts that you want to share?
Certainly. Maxime, I will tell you that I fully agree with Sandra's suggestion regarding the importance of developing a remote working policy that aligns, of course, both with the company business needs and, of course, the one of the employees. I also recommend considering the demographic and personal characteristic of your employees, such as their place of residence, the cohabitation arrangement. Think a little bit about the millennials that are living in co-living mode, or whether they have young families with young children, as these factors significantly influence their preferred work arrangements. As an example, at Xwork, the Wednesday is the most used day in the week by employees looking for a work environment where they can concentrate on their work, which is not always the case at home. In addition, I also want to add that offering these flexible arrangements can improve companies' attract and retain talents' ambitions, as talents, of course, do not always live near the company premises. From a company cost perspective, clients using Xwork save on office and mobility cost. Companies can decide to limit the place in their headquarters and consider cost-effective hubs in combination with working from home. And moreover, employees who live further away from the headquarters will limit their commuting in the traffic jams, which make it, from an environment perspective, an attractive choice as well. We at Xwork, we say that the cheapest and greenest mobility is of course the one you don't need to do. And in that respect, Xwork contributes also to the ESG ambitions of the companies. So it's an additional point which is attractive for the companies also.
Okay, thank you, Thierry. So, as a conclusion of this podcast, I understand from this conversation that the office is likely to evolve to a place focusing on collaboration and community.
Mm-hmm.
On top, providing the option to work from home or nearby a cooperative hub that aligns with the employees' needs is a valuable enhancement for your homework policy. And of course, what works for the one organization may not necessarily work for another. So therefore, we advise to conduct a pre-analysis that takes into account all the elements that we discussed during this podcast. Thierry, Sandra, thank you again for sharing your insights, and also to our listeners. And I would say stay tuned on our different platforms and our PwC website for the next podcast edition.